Friends, in this lecture, I'm trying to explain the concept of intersectionality in as simple ways as possible. And I have deliberately made a small presentation. It consists of only 7 slides. And I will explain this by using an illustration from set theory, which will make the subject more clear to our young scholars. Friends, intersectionality is a powerful theoretical concept in social sciences and literature. It is commonly used in gender studies, studies of marginalized communities, and also in post-colonial studies in literature. The concept of intersectionality suggests some specific strategies for policy making. When you target at intervention for some very specific marginal groups, like scheduled tribes or tribal women, or indigenous or primitive communities, or slum dwellers, or rural areas. It also becomes a helpful tool for civil society actors and those involved in so-called neo-social movements, like women's movements, ecological movements, and advocacy for different socioeconomic groups or political groups. I thought that since a large number of students in different departments are using this concept, it must be clarified in very simple terms. And in this video, I aim at only young researchers in social sciences. Friends, I came across this term intersection first time when I was a student of mathematics, long back, when I studied at 10+2 level. And intersection was defined like this, that imagine that there are 2 sets. In figure 1, there are 2 sets, A and B. And set is anything that consists of a number of units. Then this portion, intersection, is the portion that is common to both A and B. I mean, there are some units which are part of both set A and set B. This part of each of them is called intersection. In figure 2, likewise, you have 3 sets, A, B, and C. And there is some common area between A, B, and C. This common area or the units falling into this area constitute the intersection. So intersection means is a set of units or a subset of units which fall in all the sets A, B, and C. Friends, in sociology, recently when I worked in the field of sociology, a few years back, I was working in the field of Islamic feminism, a social movement on behalf of Muslim women. I came across the sociological understanding of the term intersection. And I found that this concept of intersectionality in sociology was introduced by Kimberly Williams Crenshaw as dealing with the experiences of Black women as a separate category. Means as a category separate from the category of women. History of writings on women is quite old. Even in 50s and 60s, you find a lot of literature by women sociologists on condition of women. But in 1989, when Crenshaw wrote a paper titled Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, which was published in the University of Chicago Legal Forum. It developed a new concept to look at marginal communities. And this paper suggested how forms of discrimination such as racism and sexism overlap and intersect, and how there is a need to consider specific conditions of Black women. In general, we know, or the writings of women sociologists at that time had shown that there is patriarchy, that women are deprived of their political rights, economic rights, social rights. But the conditions of women in the category of the Blacks are peculiar, and they need to be looked at separately. This is how this concept developed. Recently, in 2017, she wrote a book summarizing various writings on the subject and a contextual preface for each. The title of the book is On Intersectionality, Essential Writings. In 1990, Patricia Hill Collins, a sociologist, explained on intersectionality with her concept of the matrix of domination. Matrix means something multidimensional. In her book, Black Feminist Thought, Knowledge, Consciousness, and the Politics of Empowerment. For us, it appears that the concept should work for experiences of marginalized communities and sub-communities, castes and subcastes. For example, scheduled caste women as a separate category of women. Actually, there are many implications of this concept for us. One, it recognizes multiple identities. In most of the diverse and modern and postmodern societies, we have multiple identities. Everyone possesses multiple identities. For example, in India, a person is either man or woman, this is one identity, belongs to a specific caste, this is another identity, a religion, another identity, urban or rural areas, and is straight or gay, normal or disabled or physically challenged. So multiple identity. You can think of many more identities which have become visible in literature in the recent past. This concept also tells us that the various systems of oppression along different hierarchies are interconnected, that the systems of oppression are interconnected. So different forms of discrimination such as gender, caste discrimination, sexism, ableism, and classism do intersect. And more importantly, they reinforce one another. Yeah? It's not only that there are multiple identities, and along each identity there is a hierarchy, there is domination, there is exploitation, there is discrimination. But discrimination of one type reinforces discrimination of another type, or domination of one type leads to domination of another type. So this is a very important contribution of this concept. And that means that individuals who belong to multiple marginalized groups experience discrimination differently than those who belong to only one marginalized group. So that means if you belong to scheduled caste category, but you are a man, your problems are of one kind. But if you are a member of the scheduled caste and you are a woman, then your problems are double, or your discrimination or your oppression is doubly compounded. This is what the concept tells us. Going back to set theoretic concept, In figure 1, I have shown one circle which represents gender. So gender means patriarchy, hierarchy. Men are superior to women. There is only one source of discrimination or stratification. There is no intersection here. The whole society is patriarchal, and it has only one identity, men and women. Maybe in some primitive tribal communities you can find this kind of distinction, but there are no other types of distinctions based on age or class or property or occupation, etc., etc. But in figure 2, I have drawn two circles, one representing patriarchy or gender, and another circle representing communities. This is the case of a society in which there is patriarchy, but that patriarchy exists in different religions and differently. So there is intersection, and this intersection tells us that there are unique experiences of those who belong to both A and B simultaneously. So women of the marginalized communities form one such category, and their problems, their woes, their perceptions have to be studied separately. In figure 3, there are three circles. Gender is there, community is there, but there is another category, or there is another circle, that is of class. This is a case of a typically capitalist society or a modern society in which there are three major identities: gender, community, and class. And the area of intersection that has become a very small area now, that small area of intersection is the area which represents women workers from the marginalized community. So they are women in terms of sex, they are women. In terms of class position, they are workers. And in terms of community position, they belong to marginalized community. Now, this is a very useful concept. That's why many of you are using this. But I often find that understanding of the concept is not so clear. The usage of this concept are, first, it provides a holistic understanding of stratification. Intersectionality provides a comprehensive understanding of complex inequalities in society. Second, it moves beyond single axis framework, which means looking at people just in terms of gender or in terms of community or in terms of caste or in terms of class or in terms of urban and rural area. It considers all these dimensions of stratification and exploitation together. And obviously, such a concept would be very useful for policy making for states. Recognizing intersectionality as crucial provides a framework of interventions that consider intersections of multiple marginalized identities. And multiple marginalized identities need to be held or provided welfare facilities or education or housing or medical facilities or political rights in different ways. You require different strategies for them. And then it also is of great use to community organizations, civil society organizations, voluntary development organizations in advocacy and empowerment. Intersectionality empowers individuals by confirming their identity and experiences. So, in this sense, it even goes against the positivistic approach in understanding people's condition. It focuses or it stresses application of qualitative approach or grounded theory approach to understand experiences of people from the perspective of multiple sources of identities and stratification. It fosters solidarity among different marginalized groups by highlighting shared struggles of multiple social groups and collective action. This point will mean that when people marginalized on different bases, they come together and they understand that all of them are struggling for the same cause, and they can adopt some common strategies to fight against the state or to promote their welfare or to mobilize marginalized people, then they can form solidarity and this will help them. However, at the end, I must also mention a few limitations of the concept. We often find that if somebody finds something new or interesting, then he or she starts thinking that this is a new tool in the kit of social scientists and it is applicable everywhere and it's of great use. The concept of intersectionality must be viewed as a concept which also has certain limitations. First limitation is that it is particularly suited for those identities which are binary: men, women, urban, rural, high caste, low caste, Hindus, Muslims, like. But identities which are non-binary, like in some society, there may be a number of religious communities, as in our case, or the caste identity, which is fluid, evolutionary, and the identity of same or similar castes in different regions, associated with different occupations, having a different history of migration, as Radha Kamal Mukherjee says, is not same. Second limitation is that there are some marginalized identities which have remained invisible so far. Most of our Black women writers have actually focused on the condition of Black women. But there are other forms of marginalities in our society, like disability, the issue of disability, or the problems of physically challenged people, or the identity of being normal and physically challenged, and different types of disabilities, visual, motor, uh, hearing, different types of disability. And age, discrimination against the older people. Ageism, this is called ageism. These issues are not sufficiently taken care of by those who write on intersectionality. Third, that it provides a static framework. Identities change, identities are flexible, and because they change over time, so their placings, their interaction with other identities, etc., also keeps on changing. So what was true about, say, Muslim women in India 50 years ago is no more true. So identities are in flux, they are flexible, things change, and social movements are often based on specific identities, particularly new social movements, but in the process, they also create new identities. And lastly, this concept of intersectionality focuses on individuals and their experiences. So I wrote that while intersectionality highlights individual experiences, it does not normally address structural and systemic issues. For structural issues, then you have to go to structural theories, maybe of Talcott Parsons, maybe Karl Marx, maybe other theories like Bourdieu. But this intersectionality is not meant for them. Intersectionality originally developed as a theory of experiences of Black women. You can generalize to women belonging to different marginalized communities. You can also now generalize it to my understanding of intersectionality is that in countries like India, where there are multiple bases of stratification, discrimination, dominance, oppression, the three terms are used in three different senses: political, economic, and social. So in those societies, also for examining individuals' experiences, individuals belonging to different marginalized communities, this framework is okay. But for structural theories, structural conflicts, consensus, etc., this theory does not give you an adequate answer. So, friend, this is what I thought I can tell you about intersectionality. Wherever I go to any Indian university today and any department, education, sociology, political science, literature, people are talking of intersectionality. But because our students quite often do not have access to authentic literature on the subject, I thought that I can make this a small presentation and share with them. Thank you.